Okay.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Shed the Shame. We are super lucky today to be joined with Rachael Kim, who is another fantastic founder and periodpreneur. So you're going to hear all about her in a second, but we're just super excited to have you back. We are having a lot of fun this summer shedding the shame, sharing stories around menstruation, and empowering people around their periods because periods are awesome. So I'm here with the lovely Aljolynn. She's going to introduce herself. If you don't know who she is yet, which you definitely should know who she is by this point, but take it away, Aljolynn.
Thanks, Alyx. I am Aljolynn Sperber, founder and CEO of Ladybox, an organic period subscription box. My pronouns are she, her, and I came up with the idea for the Shed the Shame campaign to help promote more shameless periods and, shed that shame surrounding menstruation. And so if you want to learn more, you can visit shedtheshame.co. And what about you, Alyx? Tell us about the agenda.
Yes, I am the CEO and co-founder of The Agenda Period, which is a planning system and app that helps women and menstruators understand the 4 phases of their menstrual cycle and then use that self-awareness for their planning and for their time management and really just to understand their bodies and to understand themselves, really have a lot of self-awareness. So the app is launched and we're excited to be doing and supporting all things period. So that is what I'm about.
That's awesome. I am excited to introduce later in a moment Rachael Kim, the founder of Untaboo, which is so perfect for this Shed the Shame podcast. She knows so much about how to remove taboos from menstruation. But I was actually inspired by this headline from their recent email they sent out about should school bathrooms be required to provide period products for free for students. So if you want to check out the article, oh gosh, I forgot the link here, but it's based off of Democrats in the Illinois General Assembly. They're pushing a measure that would require schools to provide free menstruation products in both girls and boys bathrooms for grades 4 through 12. So again, this was inspired by an article share that Rachael and her team shared in their Untaboo newsletter. So thoughts, what are your thoughts, folks, here on, should schools include them?
Wholeheartedly, yes. I mean, when you're talking about the impact of the menstrual cycle, whether regardless of gender identity, the root of how social constructs and there's a physical, emotional, mental formation of it at an early age starts in school. So if you're already having schools that one don't even have genderless bathrooms, right? Where it's only cis female, cis male, you're already setting, architecting their perceptions around the space. And you already see it across New Zealand, you already see it in the UK and Scotland, where they're committed to this. And so I think it's a great discussion. Now, what it also highlights in the US, it's a state by state discussion. This is not a federally acknowledged nor the sphere of scope, even though healthcare, right, this goes to just healthcare in general, should be.
Yep.
And I think in terms of policy evolution, the fact that it's starting at a state level, that's great. I hope it catches on. I hope, states like New York and California, who are typically, very supportive and liberal around these causes and social impact causes, pick that up as well, because we need that kind of momentum for it to actually create what I consider that federal accountability around health. So am I for it? Heck yes.
Yes.
I think it's about time. Now, but their question is, it will be interesting to see how they handle it, right? Because Illinois is a very interesting state in general around politics, as we all well know. So I'm going to keep a keen eye. What about you, Alyx? What do you think?
12 bazillion percent. Let's start with the schools and then make it everywhere. It's so one of like the dumbest things I've heard against these policies are, well, people are just like gonna take like handfuls of tampons. And I'm like, you don't know how this works. Clearly, you're speaking from this place, and I have never been like if any woman has ever, or menstruator has ever said, hey, does anyone have a product? It doesn't matter who they are in high school. If I didn't like them, I would still go through my purse. If I had something, I was giving that away. Like, I don't know a single other menstruator who isn't like that, because we know the frustration or shame around not having access to those products. So that's not going to happen. That's complete bullshit. And yes, this needs to happen in all schools, and then in all workplaces, and then everywhere on the globe, amen, forever. So that's how I feel about these kind of policies. Absolutely. We can provide toilet paper, so we can figure out ways to provide menstrual products to everyone who needs them.
And on that note, right, the claim that people will overtake, and it can happen. And the thing is, like, still with new smart technologies around vending, for example, if people have a QR code, then they can have a daily limit, that kind of thing. There's still ways around it, whether it be in schools or even with, public bathrooms, homelessness, like everywhere. We're in a world where we're enabled by amazing technology, and we still haven't applied it in this space. And it's very aggravating, because we're caught in a world where we're still trying to catch up to how we're living now. But I've been really, coming from a tech background, I'm like, if I was to treat this like any other industry that I worked in previously, I'd be talking about what the life is going to be like in 2030, and how we should be accelerating and leapfrogging towards that. So I know we'll talk about it a little bit later, but
even
so many snaps to that. I love it.
Even if it does happen, and even if someone was overusing it, like, it's because there's a need, there is a lack of access, there's a lack of opportunity. Maybe it's for their mom, maybe for their older cousin or sister or something, or other menstruator in their life. And so if that's happening, like, that's still the bigger issue that we need to address. And maybe the school doesn't need to, like, carry all of that burden. If it happened on a federal level, we could talk about that policy. But if that is happening anywhere, it's because the need is still there and the support is still there. And this is a human right. Periods are a human right. I know I'm speaking to the choir here, but it's just like, why is this so complicated? Like, come on.
And, I mean, it's something like to hone in on, right? Every human exists because of the menstrual cycle.
Yes.
So when people think it's a gender discussion, I'd like to say, well, why everybody has come out of a vagina, who has had to deal with this cycle. And it sort of changes things a little bit. I mean, if I think about our team members who identify as he, him, for them, they have daughters, or they have partners and daughters. And so for them, they really they can understand going into a store what normalization is required, so that their daughters can actually get access to pure care products, right? But I think it's fundamental that we start at the school level, because individuals are getting periods as early as age 7 now, right? Like, wow. I think if you're talking about, as early as age 7, it's not common, but it does happen. And so the earlier that you normalize a conversation, provide access to the products, and have resources on hand with people who have the EQ and the data to support human development, because this is part of child development. We're going to be much better off as a society in general.
Can we all get on the same frequency, universe, please? Let's just get on the same frequency, please.
Oh my gosh, this is already getting so juicy. So please tell everyone about your background, how you came to the work that you're doing, because clearly powerhouse over here that everyone needs to be following and listening to. Yes. And like, so give us the download, like, tell us how you came to be so, like, in this position, and tell us about your company. Tell us all of the things, please.
All right. First and foremost, I, in general, I'm a little bit more shy. I think people are a little bit surprised by that. But in terms of developing Untaboo, which is 2 years old, I've been limited in terms of just the following and the speak up, because honestly, I'm an extroverted introvert. I like my privacy, but I understand at the core, for me, I'm an advocate, and the fact that I'm in a position to have a voice for other people. So my background is, I came from the Seattle area, Pacific Northwest native, left at 18, went to Northwestern and London School of Economics, and then started working for Accenture for 10 years. Now, I worked in tech for 10 years, and people are trying to understand, well, what does that really mean? Well, I worked with a lot of companies across Fortune 100 and Fortune 500 to help them, once they have their business strategy, to understand the data behind it. So a lot of it's consumer data, some of it is health data. And how do you use it in a responsible way, but also how can you build revenue and monetize it right in the right way? So I spent 10 years doing that globally for, you know, I was mainly based out of London for almost 10 years, including school. And yeah, I worked all across the world. Now, I personally had to understand, and this is where Aljolynn and I definitely talk about, is understanding self-care and EQ, because the consultant lifestyle, especially when I did the GDPR strategy for Accenture, right? Before it actually happened. So, you know,
Amazing.
I had a lot of visibility and that's a dual-edged sword. But I got to a point where I had to recognize that I wasn't taking care of myself physically nor mentally. Now, I left at basically my 10-year anniversary. That's the day I left, September 6th, 2018. And I went
Wow.
backpacking around the world. And this is where it's not that I didn't, it's almost one of those things where when I talked about periods in the workplace or with my friends, it was always like something I was a little bit annoyed by, but I never talked about it fully or felt comfortable because I was in a very male dominated environment. And as soon as you bring that out, um, it can take you from a professional lens into a more personal one, which in my case, I avoided. I avoided because I wanted them to see me for my competency. Typically, I was already being assessed against my age because I was typically younger than everybody else in the room. Normally, only woman in the room, cisgender female in the room, as well as also Asian American. So, yeah, as I backpacked around, I talked to other people because in the travel and tourism channels, there's no access or there's limited access. Tell me, you know, that any kind of airport dispensers, like they're old quarter ones. Who uses quarter? I don't use quarters anymore. Who uses quarters anymore?
Yeah.
Right. And so you're just like, okay, even if it is, this old machine is in between me and a tampon. And so what do you do? Like all other people, you MacGyver the shit out of a toilet paper, right? And then you're constantly on edge because you don't know how fast that's going to soak up. And so you're constantly going to the bathroom. And so there's this emotional, physical reaction to the experience of the lack of product, but also knowing where to find it, right? And so when I came back after traveling across four different continents, 18 countries, right? I came back and I had a chat with some people. I walked into a WeWork Labs. I was like, we should have a period pack that's more sustainable, that's made for travel and tourism, that isn't bulk, right? But that can tide people over for 2 or 3 days until they can find another source. So accessibility point is one, but also curating to the experience. Who's going to carry around bulk anymore? It's just not. Maybe if you go, you go to the store and then you go back home, and that experience is, you assume that we're just going to be sedentary or we're just going to be in one place, and that no longer holds true to the individual. We're moving. The world, despite COVID, is still moving again. So that's when I really thought about that. When I watched Period End of Sentence, when the Oscar short film, when I read Momino Left, all those, it was many different events and conversations where I was like, okay, I think we're ready as a society to actually have a proper conversation because for me, it's a gender equity discussion. This is an education discussion. You're talking about poverty. It's a multifaceted, social justice, multi-pronged problem. And so I felt like after 10 years working for corporate, that I would apply my talents to this space. And that's namely through innovation. So trying to accelerate with technology that I've seen being used on all their spaces to here, as well as being a leader in terms of saying something. It's not easy talking about your period. It was a journey for me. If I think about from the day I left my company to my starting Untaboo and even to now, my ability to speak, my comfort level, just understanding the fact of what needs to be said, it's also been an evolution. And I think that's just it. I think we're all ready to evolve as a society. The question is how. And I wanted to be a part of that solution of how we go about that going forward.
And how are you empowering menstruators with the work that you're doing with Untaboo?
So for us in our MVP, it's really around information and curating to a lifestyle. So having a period is a lifestyle. There is an emotional,
Mm-hmm.
mental, physical impact to that. And it's not the same for every individual, nor is your period the same every single time, right? We know that, yes. So it fluctuates. So the question is, well, how do you start that personalization experience? And for us, we're looking at different features. So part of that is content, being able to save that, being able to compare product to product one for one. Currently, that doesn't exist. If you look at Walmart, if you look at Amazon, you have to go product into a product. And so if you're just researching one product, it can take over an hour. With our ability to take information, you can see that in a table and actually identify most likely which is the best one for you to try, right? Out of
Yeah,
maybe 3 or 4 products. So just being able to empower them through information that's displayed in a way where easy to decision making, right? Because this is a frustrating area. And then being able to create content with stories, with partners who specialize in different areas like contraception. I know that we call it period optional.
yeah,
Um, and it's a touchy topic, right? But the thing is this, we're all about choice. How do you empower for people to choose what's best for them because they understand their lives, right?
I love that.
And so our platform in its smallest form is trying to build that experience. So then when they do buy product or services, it's an informed decision that they can understand instead of having to research many hours. They can just, it's all in one area. That's just sort of, I would say, the first cut of the MVP. The V1 and further is, it's about how do we shift it into more community conversation like period circles and whatnot, because that's just it. The awareness, the information is really the most empowering point for them people to really curate their lifestyle. And that's just something that we really want to hone in on. It's a lifestyle. It's not a
Yes.
product.
I love that, like, in choice there is empowerment, and that's part of like what you're offering to people once you have the MVP, minimum viable product,
Yeah.
ready to go, which I'm so excited for you to launch. And you and I, so Lady Box and Untaboo, worked together earlier this year on our February box, which was very focused on eco focused and friendly. And so if you're a brand and you ever want to work with Untaboo, I highly recommend, because the way that like they do their research and then they present it is so easy to understand, and you can make a decision less than 30 seconds on like what you need to move forward with. So I like wholeheartedly believe in what you're doing, and I believe that like from a consumer perspective, you're going to make it so easy for menstruators to understand like what's going to be best for the current lifestyle that they have and they're leading. So yeah, and you also are so empowering for like, me, and then, other people in your life. So I just can't highly like recommend you any more than like,
You're gonna
I'm
make me tear up here, Aljolynn. Like,
grilling on you right now, but it's so
ah,
important to like make information accessible so that you can make a choice and you feel empowered about like the choice that you're making. And that's what's so admirable about this project that you're doing, the work that you're doing.
thank you. Well, we've been through it almost from the beginning with each other, and our
Yeah.
journeys, and I always advocate more people in the space, right? So where there's more competitors, that's where they add money. Now, I mean, another reason why is we're doing this to also put money in an area that's necessary. We're
Mm-hmm.
currently, it's to a $24.9 billion industry that we're playing in, but this is going to go to 50 billion by 2025.
That sounds
And
like so easy to get to.
oh yeah, so easy. But what it does mean is for anybody else who is not directly impacted by this, they can understand that there is a quantification, right, of the value and the impact, because I mean, tell me other industries that are just as much. Even sex tech isn't that much right now. Sex tech is what, 13 billion right now compared to the 24.9. And I know that because I was speaking with some other people, but it's really, once you start talking in those numbers, even if people may not exactly understand the problem, they understand that's the money
Numbers.
that comes out of it. Yeah.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
getting investors in, getting other people to speak, I think we're at a great place in society where it's accelerating. I think now
Mhm.
there's over 200 products on the market in the femtech category, and before what, 2010, there's not even a handful, right? So we're in a great spot.
And
But
you were
now
like OB. Yeah.
OB,
Oh,
Kotex,
sorry. I was just gonna say,
always,
like,
yeah. But then
Frakes.
even from
Yeah.
the app space, right? Alex, you can probably talk about this. Like, who was really in the app space before 2010?
And those in the app space, like I look at these numbers all the time. My competitors who don't know I exist, the Flow app and the Clue app. There's like one woman on between both of those, one woman or menstruator between either of those founding teams.
Yeah.
And so when we look at like, when you talk about the human aspect, the EQ aspect, the really emotional aspect, the human-centered ability of technology, if someone does not understand the problem, they can have a lot of empathy. They can be great allies. But what we know of what gets built on the foundational level is not the same as when it's someone who identifies and who has experienced that problem firsthand.
Yeah.
And so when we even look at the way that the industry has been built, there is a complete void of the voices who are most impacted making the solutions, which is total fucking bullshit. And those dollars are not going to the founders with the problems, which again is total bullshit, right? It's like only 3% of dollars in the femtech space are going to female founded companies.
Anybody need a pink glove to remove your period products?
Y'all, I just saw this new one. It was called the Tamp Liner. It is a tampon with a little tube in which it's from the UK. You may have run into it.
I saw it, and basically
it's plastic sits there in your vagina, and like the liner tucks under your labia so that you don't shed any blood, and it says finally the hygienic way to remove your tampon. I'm like, oh, so touching my vagina now is not hygienic.
What?
We are trying to completely stop the shame, and this has been like booked as one of the most innovative ways to look at a tampon in the last 50 years.
Yes, but Alex, sadly, but if you really think about all the patents that have come since like 1930s, they have been incremental by the change in the type of string, the structure of the string, the material of the tampon. So something that's actually it's considered a big innovation step, right? Because you're adding another whole.
And it was made by a man.
A tampon.
Like they have on their website, they say made by a gynecologist, but I said they did not build this as female founded. Let me go find out who their founder is. And I was like, oh, it was a man. And also, why can't we change the shape of a tampon while we're talking about my dream list? Like it's like a penis shape. Why don't we make it like they're starting to make cups with curves? I'm like, if I'm gonna use a tampon, I want it to be a better shape.
Well, it's interesting that you say this because there is a team out of Stanford. I think they came out of Skydeck as well. They're called Tempo. They actually have a Score Crew tampon, and I believe that they're now in production. But I need to double check.
I'll have to check that out.
And the reason why I looked at them was because of the fact of, you know how with a tampon, sometimes you have some of it unused left. It's actually to help the efficiency of the usage of the tampon as well as like the flow. And I actually need to double check how they're doing, but they were probably one of the most the redesigns that I was looking at, because we initially were looking at being a brand manufacturer, right, with just different materials. But yeah, so it's just, again, the awareness and how are they being used and who uses them and what's the situation that you would use them, right? Because tampons are useful. Everything in terms of period care is contextual. Like menstrual cups are only great if you have easy access to water and you have a private bathroom, or if you carry water around with you. But like third world countries, that's not possible, nor is that sustainable, right? So and that's just another layer with our content that we want to add. It's like through different stories, depends, right? It depends
Yeah.
where you are for it to really service your lifestyle. I mean, there's one story I talk about all the time, and it's the fact that if you go to Cuba, you cannot buy period care products off the shelf. It is something that is rationed to the local people, of which you would have to buy extra off of people, right? And as a traveler, that's a pretty big thing if you expected to have it, right? So it's just, again, it's all contextual, and trying to share that information first and foremost is definitely key to getting I would say, a better future in this area.
This is amazing. This is such a great conversation. I am really curious. Yeah. What, I have so many questions. I'm like jotting them down. How do you manage period care when you travel? So what do you use in all the research that you've gained in your own traveling experiences? I love to travel too. So what is your setup? What's your situation after all of your experience and personal research?
Wow. So I would have to say this, even then it's evolving, but what I do is I over time, my body has changed. So when I was younger, my period was shorter, it was snappy, great. As I get older, it's gotten longer. So now when I travel, I try not to travel with a tampon inside. I try to do pad, for example, or period underwear. Just because I don't like the pressure nor the feel of it inside. Also, your body chemistry changes, obviously, because the air changes as you are flying. So I try to limit the impact of the situational change on my period. But when I'm moving around, I definitely use tampons. Aljolynn knows one of my favorites is Top Organic, and you have the sugar cane applicator, but also other things I'm still looking at because of COVID. Coming out of COVID, I haven't traveled that much, right? But like Dame has a reusable applicator, and I think there's certain.
Have they made that? Have they
Uh,
made that available to the U.S. yet?
they have, I believe so. And the thing about that is like, how do you then wash it? It's like it's like the same thing as a menstrual cup. And
Yep.
when you're in the bathroom, how do you wash that? So for me, I haven't shifted in the sense of the types of products. I have definitely shifted in the brands of products, but also when I use them as I travel, just because my body has changed, right? And I just want to be, because travel can be stressful, as comfortable as it can be, but still also feel like I'm not burdened, right, in any way. So that's my current approach. Now, some people may ask why I haven't tried a menstrual cup. I have tried a menstrual cup before. However, I had a bad experience, and this is one of the things where fully acknowledging if you're not empowered with the right information, if you have a bad experience with a product, rarely will people go back again to try it.
Yeah.
So because it's it's the most sensitive part of your body. Now, does that mean I'm never going to try a menstrual cup? No, but I've had to do more research and understanding how to find the one with the best fit, and that's suitable to my lifestyle. So through this research that we've been doing, I've also been identifying that, right? And there's other things as well. Maybe there's a little bit too much, like you have harder cups and softer cups, and
Yep.
harder cups are a little bit harder when you try to use your bowel movements. So, I mean, things are already difficult when you're in the air. So using a softer cup is probably something that I want to do. So there are things I've earmarked, but in terms of trying, again, I've waited for COVID to subside so that I can actually test them.
Yeah.
And things are expensive, so it's hard to if you're not like in the work all the time to try a different, like the cups can be they have some like less expensive models, but just for me the same exact thing happened. I tried a cup. I tried the Diva cup when I was in college. I was like, oh, it's gonna be amazing. It was terrible for my body. It was so uncomfortable. It was too hard, and it cost me like, I was trying to be a cool, college student, being progressive. I was like, this is $35. I am not going to spend that much money again trying something out.
Yeah.
And when I finally tried the salt cup again, that one works really well for me. But it's hard to get the encouragement to try again if it's worked so poorly for you. So that's why this tool you're creating is just going to really help de-risk those experiments for folks, which I think is super, super powerful.
Yeah, because there, as you said, there is a price tag to it. Now, we're also looking at different options to help minimize the financial impact as well, because these are expensive. But in the meantime, Period Nirvana or Period Shop, actually, they're focused on menstrual cups and discs.
She does great stuff.
Yeah, she does great stuff. But
Kim
yeah.
Rosas. Yeah.
Kim, come be on the podcast. You want to shed the shame with us? Come on, come check it out.
But yes, but she's one player, right, in the market, and we're just another one. And it's, again, people are just like, well, doesn't Grove do this? No, they don't, because the people aren't focused specifically on this area, and it's understanding that it's a part of a wider life cycle, right, for an individual. But we've started seeing, Genève and others focusing on menopause or perimenopause, which I think is fantastic. And I do think that we need to start having a stronger focus. There are a lot of people in education around, the menarche or the first period, or at school, again, school level. But if I think about what I received, the information I received at school level for the one day, and what was it, like human development? I mean, it is not even close to what people have access to on TikTok and Instagram now. And that's just it. You talk about people's habits in this space. They first talk to their friends and family. If they're not satisfied, they go to social media. Doctors are the last resort. They're the third tier, right?
Yeah.
Of information. And so it's really interesting, right? Where, how do you get into the spaces where it is parents and friends, and schools is definitely a big part of that. And it's definitely a critical part of that.
100%. So, like talking about schools who, the students in there are our future. What does the future of period care look like to you?
Oh, I have so many things, and I'm actually about to write like a set of blog posts on this. But I think this is definitely one: genderless bathrooms, where then it's not, period care products aren't associated with a gender. It's just associated with someone who menstruates or not. That's the key thing. A second way of also supporting this is packaging. Now, people don't really think about this, but packaging in an office, where it's like in an office closet, just being able to put it where, again, it's not a gendered bathroom or a gendered area. It's a common area. It's important for multiple reasons. For the genderless bathrooms, when you talk to people in transition, or you're literally talking about people try and gender identify themselves when they go to bathrooms. A lot of them code switch. It creates a lot of anxiety. So, and if you're going to a boys' bathroom or a men's bathroom, but you need period care product, like, that's a really tough situation. And it's not, I don't think it's a barrier that's necessary in any form. Now, I'm not saying that there shouldn't be any bathrooms, that are gendered, but there should definitely be a third option, right? Where product is stocked, to start, right? Because this is a transition. This is transition. We're talking about cultural transformation, baby steps. And in the workplace, it's similar, where if you could develop packaging that looked really cool, and it didn't have anything to do with like the pinks of the world associated with tampons, you know what I mean? All the stereotypical elements, but actually we have amazing package designers in the world now. We have amazing creatives.
So many.
Like, redesign this experience in the workplace to be more inclusive, and packaging is a big portion of that. So that's another thing for me.
Can I touch on that a little bit more? Because not just for period care, because when I was trying to curate the box for the trimester cares, everything was mama focused. And so not recognizing that trans men have babies, they birth babies too, was so disheartening. I'm like, I want, people that are, birthing babies to feel empowered and loved and cared for. But, everything is so female and mama focused,
and it's the language, right? Exactly. You're pointing down to the language associated with it. And I think we're coming now in society where you're starting to see neo pronouns, a little bit more genderless. Now, it's going to take a long time to really normalize that, because maybe about 3% of anyone in the LGBTQA plus community identifies or uses
Mhm.
neopronouns. But it is definitely a problem, right?
Yeah.
Language is anchored at an early age. And so being mindful of that and just understanding, honestly, there is no leader who hasn't had to like go through a journey in themselves, right, to get to this point. And as a society, we're basically stumbling into this, right? We're
Yeah.
trying to understand and see what is accepted in these areas that have been normally marginalized. How do they identify themselves? What is the best way to really cater to them? And I think
Hmm.
being curious is definitely one of the biggest things, right? But also understanding that we're definitely trying, but we're not going to be perfect either. And it's just because that was never prominent in our society before.
Yeah. I think that's something we like with the agenda have really had to get curious about and struggle with, because while not everyone who menstruates is a woman, there are women who don't menstruate. And so when we talk about this entire area and this hormonal healthcare, how do we include those experiences too? Because menstruation is not the only mark of womanhood,
No.
right? And like how we identify as women. So where we've kind of landed for now, until the language evolves to meet the moment in a better way, is like women and menstruators, and just saying like, how can we have this cyclical care, this view where it's an expanded view of the cycle, not just the period, but like, how can we really have the spaciousness for all of it?
Yeah.
Because we cut folks out who don't menstruate. Even there are cisgender women who don't have periods, or what does it mean when I'm postmenopausal? Am I no longer a woman because I'm not bleeding, right? All of these interesting intersections. And so what I am confident in and what I'm hearing on this conversation is like, we are intelligent enough to create space for everyone and make all of these needs like really get met. And that's what I am excited about this generation of innovators, is really this widening and this expansiveness, that there's like room for all of us here. We can figure this out together. So I love hearing how your process has come through. Yeah, and it's definitely something on my heart and mind, like daily. Like, how do we make sure this really fits for everyone? So cool.
Yeah, and it really hits upon that, and like, how do you add inclusion? Like, how are you inclusive? So is it, through product development, testing, all that stuff? Now for us, because our MVP, we've curated to a certain set of user customers, but as we go into V1, the accessibility and I would say the multifacets of our users who require additional support are definitely on our minds. And it's just one of those things where, especially when you're being a scrappy startup, like, where do you start? And that's just it. It's a starting point, but this is not the end of the journey. And just acknowledging and also articulating that, I think, is key, because the fact that, again, during COVID, post-COVID, as a society, we're also stumbling. I mean, people call themselves experts, and I would have to say this, is that they definitely have knowledge, but there's always going to be gaps for people, for others to help fill. And I just see that for us, or at least for myself, right? Like, there are things that we're going to be really great at, but we're going to need help to fill.
I just want to repeat what Rachel said, though. This is a starting point, and we're on a journey. Like, don't ever stop. Like, don't give up. It's a starting point, and you're going to make mistakes along the way, and that's okay. You learn from those, keep getting back up, and keep on that journey. So I loved what you just said there, Rachel. Alyx.
This is amazing. Where can people find you online? Where's the best place for them to connect with you so that they can be in the loop? Because I also need to be in the loop.
So we currently have our Instagram is probably our best channel right now. We have a website, but that's like an interim website that has zero functionality. It's just more about a little bit about us. So our Instagram is at my Untaboo. That's full stop. And then for me, it's look me up on LinkedIn, really. I think in terms of understanding my voice, because you'll see there in that intro section, I I really do talk in a little bit vulnerable of who I am and where I come from. So if you want to understand me a little bit more, that's probably the best place to go. So
Right. You can still sign up for the newsletters, which are so informative. So where can they go to sign up for those?
for that one, that's projectuntaboo.com. But we're also shifting again, once our MVP is out, we're shifting to my Untaboo, and that's a whole other different functionality. So we're making that available to closed communities towards the end of Q3, but in terms of public consumption, we're aiming towards the end of this year.
Excited for you.
This has been super awesome. We could talk to you for hours. So let's just like wrap it up and like schedule episode a 2.0 sometime in the future.
Sounds good. Thank you both so much. And I had an amazing time.
This has been awesome. Thank you. If you guys want to find these podcast episodes, they're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. And if you would like to join us to shed your own shame, you can email podcast@shedtheshameco.co. And learn more about the amazing work that this campaign is doing for WaterAid International. It is just super inspiring. And remember, the more we share, the more we shed the shame. Thanks everybody so much.